Part 63. A Middle School Cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 623. Aiken, you deceived Yoshida again. Soon after Yoshida left with the comics, it was estimated that it was just enough time for a responsible editor to arrive at the subway station. The assistant Uncle Ding Ding, who was completing the comics, suddenly raised his head and sighed. Tisk, there is nothing we can do about it. Although he tried his best to pretend to be innocent, the next words of a middle school cartoonist instantly showed his evil taste that could be called evil to the fullest. Just like putting drugs in food can make people addicted, and petting cats can make people addicted, let alone fooling my cat and getting pleasure from it. Although I didn't intend to deceive my cat at the beginning, I didn't realize it. Ding ding gee, should this be called subconscious behavior or habit? Compared to those sayings, Uncle Ding Ding did not slack off his work because of complaining about Makoto Takahashi. I think it is more appropriate to call it deliberate. Cheng. I see, is this the existence called habit? Makoto Takahashi ignored Uncle Ding Ding, who looked down on him with his dead eyes, and showed a look of realization on his face, and sighed to himself, tisk tisk tisk, humans, this bad habit called habit, even I, a mad demon, can't be immune to it and get infected. This ferocious infectiousness is comparable to the zombie virus. What a ferocious habit, should I say that at this time, after complaining, Uncle Ding Ding suddenly put down his brush and stared at Takahashi Makoto with a serious face. I say, Cheng, the reason why you don't let Yoshida see the completed subsequent plot is actually to give him a sudden shock after the comic serialization is confirmed, right? Huh? Shock? Ding Ding Ji-san, to some extent, the subsequent plot is not even a surprise, compared to Uncle Ding Ding, who is still entangled in the plot of A Certain Lowly is Miserable. Takahashi Makoto seems very calm. To be precise, he should be too calm. Although I am somewhat reluctant to admit it, I have to say that as a crazy cartoonist, I am getting older. So whether it is shock or surprise, it is too stimulating for me, who is already old. At most, it can only be regarded as following and maintaining the previous style. Following and maintaining the previous style, he. After thinking about the comics serialized by Makoto Takahashi in recent years, Uncle Ding Ding's mouth twitched, and he could not find any strength at all. But, it is a reason to refute. For cartoonists, it is very important to find their own style. Takahashi Makoto acted like a life mentor and used a matter-of-fact tone to forcefully popularize and recommend comics to Uncle Ding Ding and Mashiro. For example, the good friends of Yashiro and Mumanjai have now mastered the style called Evil Way, and our ally, the King of Black Flame, has brought the bloody battles in the comics of Royal Way to the fullest extent. For example, Ryoko, who had previously abducted two of my assistants, has gradually learned how to corrupt people's hearts through comics. Even that guy, Little Otter, has also embarked on the mysterious path of finding pleasure through comics. So as a comic artist who calls himself a crazy devil, it is quite normal for Hao Wing-kuma to follow and maintain his previous style, isn't it? Oh, that's it, so your style is devilish, Cheng. Uncle Ding Ding said that after working as an assistant for Makoto Takahashi for many years, not only his skills in drawing comics have been improved, but also his ability to complain has increased significantly, although Uncle Ding Ding himself is not happy about this at all. The correct term is probably chaos or contradiction or something like that. No, it should be called distortion. Makoto Takahashi expressed dissatisfaction with Uncle Tintin's definition of his style. Human beings exist in the world, originally based on a better and more regular life, so they have established morality and laws, but it is precisely such humans who often shamelessly trample on morality and wantonly violate the law. The original intention of dividing good and evil is to distinguish between good and bad people, but it is precisely such humans who always use the banner of justice that can be read as I am doing this for your own good and written as I am not the one who is hurt. Anyway, and then use their own malice to wantonly trample on the kindness of others. Ha, it is humans who set everything, and it is also humans themselves who subvert everything. Don't blame all the sins on humans, it should have been a very powerful complaint and counterattack, but at this moment, it came out of Uncle Tintin's mouth, but it was quite unimpressive, or it could be said that it was quite lacking in courage. Originally, when I came to this world, I once thought about becoming a partner of justice, a heroic existence that can always lend a helping hand when others need help, but in the human world, justice is too cheap, too easy to be distorted, and even too easy to be used. It is clear that Takahashi Makoto's tone is so impassioned at this moment, but Uncle Tintin, who has experienced the baptism of life, has not yet been widely used. The Mashiro girl and Sarada boy who came into contact with the society, but they heard a hint of desolation and helplessness. Is this the effect of the master-level speech skill? It is said that there was a person who mastered the skill to the master level in the past. He seemed to be a certain curly-haired emperor of a certain superpower in the comics. When I awakened the magic eye of human heart reading due to an accidental injury, I truly understood that if I want to survive in such a distorted world, I must abandon everything and distort myself only if you have enough awareness. Alas! Although I know that Takahashi Makoto is talking serious nonsense, I have to admit that what a certain middle-class cartoonist said seems to make some sense. That's why Uncle Tintin said this. A sentiment filled with various complex emotions, right? Perhaps. This uncle, who has worked as an assistant for many years, also had his youthful and frivolous years. Only, with the improvement of life experience, the uncle has gradually understood the rules of social survival. Just as Takahashi Makoto said, in order to survive in this world, he has to abandon everything and distort himself, right? Sarada boy, who is still a high school student, has completely fallen into the crash mode. That's right. After all, for people like Sarada boy who are still living in school, Takahashi Makoto's remarks, and Uncle Tintin's emotion is completely equivalent to killing the longing and expectation in the young man's heart for the future. That. Uncle Tintin let out an inexplicable sigh. After seeing the confused and even dull-looking young boy, Tintin suddenly said something bad to himself, and immediately spoke in a very clumsy way, trying to save him premature contact. Dark reality, Sarada-kun, many cartoonists have various quirks when completing their comic manuscripts, so you don't need to be too surprised by Cheng's performance just now. It belongs to Cheng's unique cartoonist mode. Humph, Tintin-ji-san, did you just sigh empathetically? After receiving the hint from Uncle Tintin's eyes, Takahashi Makoto also began to change the topic, but no matter the skill or the level of proficiency, are far from being on the same level as Uncle Tintin. So I integrated the distortion of human origins into the comics. How could my companion cats who have already had similar experiences be frightened? Tintin-ji-san, don't underestimate the editor-in-chief of the weekly magazine. Yeah. But that's how I was. Ahem, it's nothing. Uncle Tintin recalled his previous experience of observing comic manuscripts, and began to sympathize with the editor-in-chief of a certain weekly. I hope Yoshida-kun can realize it soon, otherwise, when you see the content of the 4th episode in the future, Yoshida-kun will definitely be deceived. The reason why Uncle Tintin expressed such emotion was, of course, to sympathize with Yoshida, who was so happy that he got carried away with the new comic series. After all, a certain editor who is probably on his way home now does not know at this moment that the comic fate has already the completed comic manuscript is not just 3 chapters completed as a certain second-grade cartoonist said. And more importantly, before reading the 4th episode, it is easy to be influenced by the content of the first 3 episodes. Or maybe it's a mistake. My phone is turned off, so I'm working overtime or something, and if I can't find anyone, who cares? Go to hell, that's what a certain cat originally did. But I never expected that the landline number was left in the contact information at the beginning, so, well, now my face hurts and my knees hurt. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 624. Chapter 624. The theme of this comic is distortion. The magician cooperated with the heroic spirit to fight for the existence called the Holy Grail. Because of the ability of the magician and the heroic spirit to transcend common sense, the scene and scale of the battle between the seven masters and the heroic spirit rose to become war. Judging from this setting alone, the content of the first 3 chapters of the comic Fate has already defined the entire comic as the tone of an epic and vast war. But why is it said that Yoshida was misled by the first 3 chapters of the manga Fate? Because the plot world constructed by the first 3 chapters of the comic cannot express the essence of this comic, or this series of comics. In fact, the works in the Fate series, no, even all the works that revolve around the world of Xingyu are not royal works in the traditional sense. On the contrary, this series of works is more suitable to be classified as dark. In the midst of depression. Whether it is the several works surrounding the Holy Grail War or the Sky Realm series derived from the same world, what they tell is not a heartwarming and healing story, but a series of coincidences and accidents that happened in something that shouldn't happen to the character. To analyze it in a slightly simpler way, the entire series of works involved in the Type Moon series can be described as distorted. Although magicians hide in the world of human life, they ignore secular laws and morals. Things that are not acceptable to normal society, such as murder and human experimentation, are common sense to magicians. Existence, from this point of view, the existence of magicians is a group of existences with extraordinary power but completely distorted human nature. As an important participant in the Holy Grail War, the heroic spirits, the same is true. According to the descriptions of heroes in human legends and history, combined with today's real society, a little imagination will tell that the so-called heroic spirits are actually difficult to integrate into today's society. Let's not talk about the way heroic spirits exist. As heroic spirits themselves are beings praised and praised by mankind, their heroic deeds will naturally be passed down as mankind continues. However, in today's society, the glorious deeds once completed by heroes, even the existence of the hero itself is like a vicious tumor, which is difficult to be accepted by today's human beings. Just like the incompatibility between Emi Yakiritsugu and the heroic spirit King Arthur. Assassination, blowing up the hotel, using the word games in the contract to plot against director Ken, all the methods and means Emi Yakiritsugu used throughout the Holy Grail War seem to be quite unlimited and quite despicable, but I have to admit that what's more, the way to win a war is to eliminate all participants in the war. Now that it is clear that this is an endless war, isn't it natural to use any means to achieve victory? In today's society, even if they know that they will be stigmatized and criticized in the future, in order to obtain more benefits, human beings will still choose to carry out actions such as deceiving their loved ones and killing their colleagues and friends. Although in terms of results, the behaviors carried out by humans in real society do not seem to be as exaggerated as those of Emi Yakiritsugu, it cannot be denied that, the nature of the two is exactly the same. King Arthur, Emi Yakiritsugu's servant, let alone the effeminate setting in the comics, whether it is recorded in historical documents or recorded in human legends, King Arthur is worthy of his title of King of Knights. He is a noble knight and a great king. Just like the knights of the ancient rivers and lakes, although they are often criticized with words such as Xia uses martial arts to violate the forbidden, most people in the Jianghu still spontaneously abide by the Jianghu rules to act, and they were born in a time when wars were frequent. In the chaotic era, King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, and it can even be said that most humans with the title of knight, also voluntarily used principles such as 8 virtues of knights to restrain their behavior. To put it simply, whether it is a knight-errant or a heroic spirit, looking at the existences that can be praised and praised by humans, each one has his own rules and bottom line. Of course, some abnormal heroic spirits also exist. But in today's era, those beings who have rules of conduct and bottom lines are often treated as naive and heartless world-class good teammates by the humans around them, and they are tricked, killed, and sold in various ways. Therefore, Don't accuse Emi Yakiritsugu of being too extreme or despicable because he is influenced by King Arthur's noble chivalry, because Emi Yakiritsugu's use whatever means necessary to achieve the goal way of doing things is exactly what is common in modern society. Most of the methods commonly used by human beings, at best, the results are different. However, in the manga Fate, the noble Night King is paired with the unscrupulous Emi Yakiritsugu. This kind of teaming up of two people can almost be regarded as naturally incompatible and mutually hostile, and the result is naturally, just imagine. By the way, this is probably a typical example of the so-called don't force integration in different circles, right? No matter how much King Arthur hated Emi Yakiritsugu for acting too cruelly, and no matter how much Emi Yakiritsugu despised King Arthur for acting too naively, both the heroic spirit and the master had tried to interfere with each other's behavior and tried to change the other's principles of behavior. Only from this point of view, it is a distortion. For example, Uncle Korea, who wrote the novel series The Dark Swordsman Kalia with himself as the protagonist, and said the famous sentence "everything is this guy's, Tokyo-me," fault, which has been passed down for many years, is also a being who was toyed with by the twist of fate. Originally, Uncle Korea was the only normal person in the entire comic. He had already escaped from the bondage of the Matu family and could live as a normal person. However, because of his good intentions, he wanted to participate in the Holy Grail War and do what he could for the woman he once loved and her daughter, so he suffered the mockery and playing of fate. In order to save Sakura, who was trapped in the worm cave and tortured, Uncle Korea took the responsibility for his escape in the most courageous way, and offered his entire life in the desire to make lowly Sakura happy. Uncle Korea, who never claimed to be a savior or a hero, was able to perform heroic self-sacrificing behavior. From this point alone, it can be inferred that Uncle Korea's body, which was eaten by insects, must have a noble soul. However, a man like Uncle Korea, who has a noble soul, was born into a twisted family and participated in the twisted war of Holy Grail. The result is self-evident, so no matter what happened to Uncle Korea later or his initial kindness, it was naturally distorted under the drive and manipulation of fate. In short, this comic Fate centered around the Holy Grail War, after the foreshadowing of the first 3 episodes, is a tragic collection of distorted stories. The style of the whole comic is, no, it should be said to be dark and depressing. But in the 3 episodes that Makoto Takahashi gave to Yoshida, there was no plot related to this aspect at all. In the 3 episodes of the comic manuscript, there were only the personality of the magician, the existence of the heroic spirit, the common sense of the Holy Grail War, and the gorgeous and shocking heroic spirit summoning scene. Therefore, it is natural for the editor Yoshida, who only read the first 3 chapters and couldn't wait to submit the comic to the serialization meeting, to be misled. As for why Uncle Tintin complained that Takahashi Makoto's style was ghostly. I remember when the comic Madoka was serialized, the plot of the senior sister's head being bitten off seemed to appear in the plot of the 4th chapter, although the comic Madoka was serialized by Makoto Takahashi and Eiji Nizuma as Makoto Shinkai. Don't forget that the plot of the entire comic was provided by a certain Chuyunibu cartoonist. Being ridiculed and despised by those who don't know, and being played with as pleasure by those who know, oh, it hurts Uncle Korea to say. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do SD Email. Chapter 625. Chapter 625, Young Sarada, do you want to learn how to communicate with cats? There are far more things in the world than we can imagine, therefore, we don't need to be comfortable with narrow thinking, but should realize that everything that exists in front of us is trustworthy. While quickly drawing on the manuscript paper, Takahashi Makoto began to give a lecture called Philosophy Class of a Middle School Cartoonist to his assistant, Uncle Ding Ding, whose mouth was twitching, and the expressionless girl Mashiro, Let's not talk about whether we can prove the existence of fantasy things. We can only have an unquestioning attitude towards the authenticity. It can be analyzed. However, it is undeniable that ordinary people are bound by the name of reason and common sense, and they are always unable to carry out their own obsessions. Uncle Ding Ding has long been accustomed to the working mode of a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist, so he naturally mastered the distraction skill of drawing while listening perfunctorily and was not disturbed by Makoto Takahashi's words. As for Mashiro Girl, she completely focused on the draft and completely ignored Makoto Takahashi's weird remarks. This amazing concentration, should it be said that he is worthy of being a world-class genius painter? So, the only one who is really influenced by a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist, no, it should be considered persecution, is the only one who is working hard to write a game plan, right? Well, it should be about time, right? Makoto Takahashi suddenly stopped painting, turned his eyes to the door of the entrance, and said abruptly, "It is estimated that in about 15 minutes, a wildcat of mine will appear. Gentlemen, please be prepared to surround and kill it." Hey hey hey. Uncle Ding Ding's tone sounded perfunctory as usual, but it must be said that this is the right way to deal with a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Mashiro Girl continued to immerse herself in the great cause of completing the comic manuscript. It seems that whether it is Uncle Ding Ding, the assistant who has been working for a long time, or Mashiro Girl who has been following Makoto Takahashi not long ago, they have gained some insights on how to communicate with a certain Chuyuni cartoonist during this period of time, especially compared to a certain boy, Sarada, who has been mentally counseled by Makoto Takahashi many times. What the hell is a siege? And how do you know that Yoshida-san will come later? The only normal boy, Sara, showed the attitude that a normal person should have, but in return, Uncle Ding Ding covered his face helplessly, and a certain middle school cartoonist looked at him with unscrupulous contempt. As for the performance of the girl Mashiro, give up. The girl Mashiro, who is completely immersed in the world of comics, can completely ignore the boy Sara who she cares about the most, and the annual ring cake that she likes the most. The wisdom of mortals, whether it is the ability of ridicule or the effect of contempt, it is indeed the classic saying of Colonel Chu that is the most powerful. Makoto Takahashi gently poked the blank manuscript paper on the table with a paintbrush and began to explain the daily communication between cartoonists and editors to the ignorant boy Sarada. According to the personality and daily habits of my cat, once the weekly meeting confirms that the comic can be serialized, that guy will definitely come to discuss in person. On the contrary, if the comic cannot pass the serialization meeting, the timid cat will definitely inform me over the phone, and will not dare to tell me the result of serialization failure face to face. Yes, that's it. This can only mean that you are too scary, uncle in a white coat. Recalling the scene when Mashiro Girl and editor Itza communicated before, the rhythm of the conversation was completely controlled by editor Itza, and Sarada boy silently complained in his heart. Of course, in order to hide his slander of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist from being seen through, Sarada used the skill of topic change that he had learned and mastered during this period, but time. Tisk, Sarada, you still haven't figured it out until now. Takahashi Makoto pointed at the wall clock and replied with sympathy and contempt, usually the weekly serialization meeting will end around 11 o'clock, and considering the traffic jam and the fact that my cat, the shameless guy, seems to have a fanatical obsession with drug-infused cuisine recently, so my cat, that guy, will definitely rush here at lunchtime, which is around 12 o'clock. On the one hand, it is to inform and hypocritically congratulate the start of the new series, and on the other hand, of course, it is to come here for a free meal. Why is it that he is a responsible editor who comes to communicate with the cartoonist, but in your description, he has become a hypocritical and cowardly person who eats and drinks for free? Is this the power of the master-level art of language? At this moment, Sarada realized for the first time that it was not that he was superficial, but that the routines in the world of adults were too deep. Meow, 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 a black cat suddenly jumped off the windowsill and ran to Takahashi Makoto and called out, "Speaking of cats that can make such rhythmic calls, so far, Sarada has only seen the black cat Ruri in Takahashi Makoto's house. Meow meow, meow meow, meow meow meow." What made Sarada boy even more speechless was that a certain second-grade cartoonist in a white coat did not like many cat-sucking maniacs and cat-loving experts. The black cat Liuli suddenly appeared, picked her up, sucked and stroked her, but instead made a rhythmic cry that was almost similar to Liuli's, which was quite devastating. This scene seems like one person and one cat are exchanging information. No. In fact, this is not Sarada boy's illusion. Because, has my subordinate cat reached the corner of the street, Makoto Takahashi held his chin and thought for a moment, then gently rubbed the black cat Liuli's head. "Thank you for your hard work, Shwedingaking. Let your subordinates retreat for now. Let me take over the rest, yeah, man. El Sai Congruo." Meow, the black cat Liuli called out cutely, then gently shook its tail, and then jumped out along the windowsill with ease. "Tusk, you are really willful to make such a request." Makoto Takahashi looked at Liuli's disappearing figure and sighed helplessly, then he noticed the strange eyes of Sarada young man looking at him, so, the second-level cartoonist asked decisively and angrily, "Hey, Sarada boy, what's that look in your eyes?" Although Takahashi Makoto had previously demonstrated master-level cat master skills in front of Sarada boy at that time, until now, Sarada boy didn't believe in Takahashi Makoto's special skill of cat language, which is said to be able to communicate with cats. However, just now, Makoto Takahashi was able to pinpoint the current position of the editor-in-chief of a certain weekly magazine through a few meows of unknown meaning, although the Sarada boy wanted to complain that it was the delusion of a middle-class cartoonist, but when the doorbell rang, and the familiar voice of editor-in-chief Yoshida came from outside, the Sarada boy's fantasy called normal human cognition was shattered. Were you just communicating with Liuli? Of course. Otherwise. By the way, you don't think I'm practicing my false voice, right? Makoto Takahashi stood up and opened the door, while not forgetting to mock Sarada boy. "By the way, Mr. Schrödinger can only control there are about 300 subordinates, so the radius of the surveillance range will not exceed 3 kilometers, alas, the training is still far away." "No, I just think. I used to think that Black Cat Ruri looked a bit like a monster, but now it seems that you are the monster, uncle." Although Sarada boy didn't say it out loud, the look he looked at Makoto Takahashi was "This message is conveyed." Huh? Boy, do you want to learn how to use cat language to communicate with cats? I don't know if it was intentional. Sarada boy's evasive eyes were misunderstood by a certain middle-class cartoonist want to learn from a teacher but feel embarrassed arrogant behavior. "Okay, I will teach you when I have time." This. Should I refuse at this time, right? You should definitely refuse it. I feel that if I really agree, then I will bid farewell to the ordinary life and step into the inhuman realm. "Sonata boy, please sing a meow meow song in front of 100 cats later." If it resonates with the cats, it means that you have learned cat language. Sarada boy qualifications. As for the rest, let's wait until you prove that you have such qualifications. By the way, what the hell is meow meow song? Sarada boy looked at Makoto Takahashi with a confused expression, as if he needed further explanation. Hey, just like not everyone can master bawang color haki, learning cat language requires qualifications. Isn't this a natural setting? I was 5 points short of passing the exam. I confessed a little late. The other person is already with a certain cat's roommate who lives in the university. It is said that they will get married next year. Well, I told a certain cat during Double 11, all readers are interested. If so, you can calculate the damage multiplier bonus. Alas, what a misfortune. A certain cat first declares that this is not complaining about life, nor does it want to complain about anything. It just feels that it is posting its depressed things to let readers please. After all, facts have proved that when humans see other people's misfortunes, it will produce a pleasant mood most of the time. Therefore, dear readers, please face life with joy. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 626. After successfully making Sarada Boy doubt his normal life, Takahashi Makoto opened the door with a joyful smile on his face, and let in the editor-in-chief who was waiting impatiently outside. Of course, during the process of opening the door, a certain secondary cartoonist did not forget to cast a warning look at Uncle Tintin who was peeping over there. Got it, the next target is indeed Yoshida-san. Uncle Tintin instantly understood the message conveyed by Makoto Takahashi's eyes, so he spread his hands pretending to be innocent, shook his head helplessly, and then imitated the Mashiro girl, trying to numb himself by immersing himself in complete the great work of the manga draft. Searched can on Google. Every kind of secondary cartoonist has a lost assistant. Should we say that Uncle Tintin is indeed a strong man who belongs to the assistant of a certain secondary cartoonist? Hey, my beloved cat, Alola. Makoto Takahashi greeted Yoshida enthusiastically, although Yoshida couldn't understand the unique way of greeting in the Alola region. After seeing the smile on Makoto Takahashi's face, a certain editor consciously he did not ask rhetorical questions such as which place's greeting is this, but went straight to the point. Chen, your new comic fate has been. We passed the weekly serialization meeting and decided to start serializing it from next month's issue, right? Before Yoshida could finish his words, Takahashi Makoto showed his powerful intelligence-gathering ability and directly reported what had happened. The decision was made at the weekly serialization meeting. My beloved cat, let's not talk about the outcome for now. I think the intelligence department in your organization should be reorganized. Chen, you already know. Yoshida glanced at Makoto Takahashi in surprise, and then hesitantly asked after thinking for a moment, could you have installed a high-tech product like a bug on me? No, using technological items such as bugs is a dirty trick only used by the scientific side. Since I am a mad demon, I naturally belong to the magic side, such as driving familiars. In short, with your low IQ and superficial knowledge, it is natural that you cannot understand some common sense methods on the magic side. Takahashi Makoto turned aside from the Mashiro girl who was still working hard over there, seemed to think of something, and then asked Yoshida. Also, my familiar cat, let me correct you a little, the comic called Fate can be completed in such a short time, it is not something I can do alone. Is that why Chen insisted on adding the name Shiina Mashiro in the author column of the comic? Yoshida had a look of surprise on his face, but after a moment it was replaced by doubt. Although I understand Makoto, you positioned Mashiro as a manga artist rather than an assistant, but what happened to Eiji Niizuma? Why did you add Eiji Niizuma's name in the author column? Because the King of Black Flame will also participate in the manga in the future. Makoto Takahashi said in a matter-of-fact tone, which made Yoshida frown for a moment. However, a certain second-year manga artist didn't care, and instead took advantage of Yoshida's preparation to protest. When he was speaking, he continued to add, and my familiar cat, you have to know that there are a lot of fighting scenes in this comic. Many of the fighting scenes are taken care of by the King of Black Flame, so adding the name of the King of Flame is also appropriate. Although I think this is a bit inappropriate. Looking at Makoto Takahashi's calm look, Yoshida still did not say the words of comfort, but if Chen, you think there is no problem with this, then the weekly we will naturally respect your decision, Chen. Originally, I planned to invite Lyuza. Makoto Takahashi's unscrupulous speech made the editor-in-chief of a certain weekly magazine twitch his lips, but considering that Lyuza recently committed a crime, in order not to be implicated, in the end, I reluctantly gave up. By the way, who is the person who caused all this? recalling the time when his colleague Hattori editor complained about the tragic Shura field between cartoonist Shizukawa and his assistant Kadada in the office, Yoshida was suddenly speechless. It seemed that the one who originally asked the two assistant girls to help Jing He was the second-year cartoonist in a white coat with a joyful smile on his face, right? I said that my beloved is a cat, and I almost forgot. What is your purpose in coming here today? Makoto Takahashi, who did not want Yoshida to pursue further, immediately changed the subject wisely. Is it just to tell you it's a trivial matter like passing a serialization meeting for a new manga, right? The only cartoonist who can be sure that the new comic will pass the serialization conference, maybe you are the only one, Chen. Yoshida seemed to be complaining but actually praised Makoto Takahashi's words. Naturally, he received a disdainful look from a middle-class cartoonist. After smiling for a moment, Yoshida raised his hand and looked at his watch, with a mysterious smile on his face. It's about the same time, Chen, turn on the TV and have a look. The talk show of the King of Black Flame. Although Takahashi Makoto showed disdain for Yoshida's rather clumsy behavior of titillating people, out of curiosity about Eiji's remarks, he still followed Yoshida's words like that. He turned on the TV and tuned to a certain channel, but after taking a look at the program being broadcast on the TV, Takahashi Makoto immediately became energetic. It's interesting, Lyozi actually participated in that talk show as a new cartoonist. Yeah, tisk. Yoshida glanced at Makoto Takahashi beside him, smacked his lips in dissatisfaction, and muttered in a low voice with resentment, if it weren't for the fact that this guy, Makoto, had already reached the late stage of Shuyunibu, with the popularity of the cartoonist Hauer he would have received many invitations to talk shows. Are you unwilling to accept this? Yeah, unwilling to accept this, After replying with a sentence, Yoshida saw Makoto Takahashi staring at him with interest. A responsible editor immediately smiled awkwardly. Actually, it's not bad. It's the right way for cartoonists to stay at home and complete their comics. It's all evil for cartoonists to participate in talk shows. How can such a filthy existence in the world accommodate great people? What about the big and crazy demon god Feng Guangai Yuan Kuma? Takahashi Makoto smiled disdainfully at Yoshida's hypocritical remarks. So my cat, you should give up some of your obsessions as soon as possible. If you really can't let go, I can kindly let you be reborn again. Just as Takahashi Makoto was happily communicating with Yoshida, Uncle Ding Ding on the assistant side also saw the talk show being broadcast on TV. When he came here as an assistant, except for Takahashi Makoto, a cartoonist whose way of thinking belongs to the non-human category, Jinghe River almost didn't communicate with other people. However, looking at Jinghe River in the show, who was still a little shy, but could communicate normally with the host, Uncle Ding Ding sighed. Let the assistant learn for a period of time, and then he can debut as a cartoonist. Let the shy boy who originally had certain communication barriers be able to communicate smoothly with the host in the talk show. And all this is the result of Takahashi Makoto's education with various normal and abnormal means. Although there are many problems with the character of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist, Uncle Ding Ding has to admit. In a sense, Takahashi Makoto is a qualified teacher. Thinking back to how ferocious a certain cat was in drinking, now. A little bit of wine makes a certain cat have a stomachache to the point of doubting life. Alas, a certain cat has really become a useless cat. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao Do Sde Mao. Chapter 627. The reason why Eiji Niizuma and Shizukawa participated in the talk show was naturally to cooperate with the promotion of the comic animation, and it was quite coincidental that the company that produced Eiji Niizuma's manga Hero Academia and Shizukawa's manga Zan Animation was Taigasa, which was controlled by Chen Ben, who had countless bad relationships with Takahashi Makoto. According to Chen Ben's intelligence collection ability, who was nicknamed Four-Eyed Fox, he was naturally able to collect a lot of information about Eiji Niizuma and Shizukawa, so they deliberately arranged for these two cartoonists to appear in the same talk show. Of course, their intention was to create some gimmicks for publicity. Of course, in order to ensure that the publicity intention is not too obvious and the appearance is too ugly, the host of such programs usually chats with the interviewee about some daily related things, and then gradually leads the topic to the animation that needs to be promoted. The original normal plan should be like this. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow. However, unfortunately, when the interview program was about the topic of interesting stories in the cartoonist professional circle, Shinzuma Eiji, who had a fate of enemies with a certain Chuyuni cartoonist, and Shizuruwa, who had a master-disciple bond with Takahashi Makoto, decisively disrupted the originally arranged interview plan. The manga artist I want to compete with the most, is of course the teacher Howin Kuma, who is pronounced as partner and written as rival. When the host of the talk show saw the expectation and enthusiasm of finding a rival of equal strength on Eiji Naizuma's face when he talked about a certain Chuyuni manga artist, he immediately had a bad feeling, but unfortunately, it was too late to stop Eiji Naizuma from speaking next. In terms of the type of comics, whether it is orthodox or evil comics, Mr. Howin can master and control them skillfully. In terms of the style of comics, Mr. Howin can easily control the two almost opposite styles of beautiful and gorgeous and wild and bold. In terms of the plot of comics, whether it is a touching warm healing comic or a thought-provoking dark healing comic, Mr. Howin can do it easily. Not caring about the host's embarrassed look, Nizuma Eiji's eyes flashed a trace of admiration, and then immediately changed to a fiery fighting spirit, and talked freely. Mr. Howin and I debuted as cartoonists at about the same time. However, the number of comics that have been serialized and completed so far has far exceeded mine. Although in terms of the number of serializations, Mr. Howin Kuma has indeed surpassed many cartoonists, but as a weekly popular cartoonist, Mr. Nizuma Eiji, you are also very good. Trying to change the subject by boasting about Nizuma Eiji, shouldn't the host who can't control the rhythm of the interview be a good host? According to the information we got from the weekly magazine, each of your serials, Mr. Nizuma Eiji, has achieved amazing results. Unlike many newcomers, they have not only shown a short-lived brilliance with their debut works, but in the serial duel with Mr. Howin, it seems that I lost more times. Nizuma Eiji pouted, poked his finger, and said in a depressed tone, "Hee." The host of the interview program heard this, and the flattering smile on his face froze. He stared at Nizuma Eiji helplessly, squeezed out a perfunctory laugh from his mouth, and said awkwardly, "Yes, that's right, ahem, it seems that Mr. Nizuma Eiji has a very high opinion of Mr. Howin Kuma." Of course, hearing the host mention the topic he was interested in, Nizuma Eiji became more excited. Of course, the host was regretting it at this moment and slapped himself in the face more than 100 times in his heart. Because Mr. Howin is not only the most powerful partner, but also the best competitor. Partner? That, Mr. Nizuma Eiji, wait a minute, since the program has been led astray by Nizuma Eiji, then we can only let it go, so the host is definitely not one who has already given up on himself. After hearing the news that Nizuma Eiji accidentally revealed, he immediately showed his gossip heart, which symbolizes the human instinct to seek knowledge, and asked curiously, "According to the information I know, Mr. Nizuma Eiji, you and Mr. Howin Kuma only worked together when the Tuhao series was serialized in the weekly series, right? Then why do you think Mr. Nizuma Eiji thinks that Howin Kuma is Inu Kuma a great partner? Can we make a judgment based on just that one cooperation? What? Don't you know?" Nizuma Eiji looked at the host with some surprise, pinching his chin and said strangely, "I have cooperated with Howin Kuma many times. Oh, I remember. You don't know the information about that yet. What are you talking about, Nizuma Eiji?" Curiosity is human instinct, especially when facing the hidden incident that is about to be announced. No one should not care, by the way, if there is such a person, then you can definitely label him as a tsundere camp. Well, since Mr. Feng Guangyuan didn't explicitly forbid it, then there should be no problem with me saying this, right, Shinzuma Eiji, that kind of thinking before and after doing things attribute is not suitable for you, so, don't pinch your chin and mutter while thinking. Actually, we are the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai. Oh, the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai, Lie, right. Ahaha, your reaction is really interesting, Shinzuma Eiji, who has been infected with some unimaginable interest by a certain Chuyuni cartoonist, looked at the host's extremely surprised performance, and a happy smile appeared on his face, and continued to add, but I didn't lie, about the origin of the name of the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai, it is actually the same as Mr. Yashiro Mumanai, who chose a word from the name to form it. No, the point is not this. After the host reacted, he stared at Shinzuma with a rather resentful look. Eiji paused for a long time, and then spoke quietly after being urged by the director many times, in other words, all the works of the cartoonist Makoto Shinkai in the monthly and weekly magazines over the years, are actually completed by you, Mr. Eiji Nizuma, and Mr. Kumahawin. Yeah, Mr. Kumahawin is responsible for providing the plot, and I am responsible for completing part of the comic manuscript. Eiji Nizuma squinted his eyes and thought for a while, then took out a weekly magazine Shonen Jump from the sofa behind him, pointed to a comic serialized in it and said, it's the same division of labor as Mr. Ahomyumha. Obviously, Eiji Nizuma and the host were not talking about the same topic at all. I see. The depressing ending of Madoka in the comic Madoka, and the crazy human experiments in the comic is certain scientific railgun. The host's voice inexplicably rose a lot. This is no longer a normal interview program, but an interrogation, right? Are all those plots that readers have criticized and wanted to send knives to the original author all from the hand of the cartoonist Hao Kuma? Of course. Hey, Eiji Nizuma, pay attention to the host next to you. It is because of the cooperation with Mr. Howin that I have set foot in the field I have never touched before. The gloomy face matched with the almost broken smile, plus the looming black aura on his body. It is also thanks to the help of Mr. Howin that I finally opened the door to the new world. This is already a very obvious sign of blackening. As Eiji Nizuma talked about the mental journey after cooperating with a certain Chuyuni cartoonist, the host's face became more and more ugly, especially when he heard Eiji Nizuma briefly describe some heartbreaking and depressing plots, and did not forget to mention some Chuyuni remarks of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. The talk show host's string of reason finally reached the edge of breaking. The camera turns back to Takahashi Makoto. The editor-in-chief, who was eating and drinking for free, suddenly put down his bowl and chopsticks, turned around and stared at Takahashi Makoto. Ah-Cheng, I think you'll be in trouble for the next period of time, after twitching his lips, Yoshida said with some pain. Well, Yoshida's expression at the moment was very painful. Because he couldn't laugh when he saw a funny thing like a certain Chuyuni cartoonist being sold, and he had to pretend to be helpless because he was worried about the revenge of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. This level of pain is enough to reach the level of being unable to laugh after being poked at a serious meeting. Oh, has this day finally come? Takahashi Makoto sighed with some melancholy. In fact, when we started working together, I knew that the Black Flame King would make such a decision. That's right, humans are a species that counts in units of 100 million, but they have a heart that cannot be measured in any unit. Real man. Cheng, you don't have to think too much. Yoshida looked at Takahashi Makoto's melancholy expression, and rarely complained. Instead, he patted the shoulder of a certain middle school cartoonist in a comforting way. Besides, it's not like you haven't drawn heart-wrenching and depressing plots before, so what's there to worry about? By the way, Cheng, what's the matter with your contemptuous look? My beloved cat, your brain circuit is really amazing. Takahashi Makoto reached out and slapped Yoshida's hand on his shoulder, looking at Yoshida with a caring for the mentally retarded look. was just feeling that the Black Flame King was a little bit unkind. Huh, Yoshida was more concerned about Takahashi Makoto's explanation than a small matter like a sore hand. He had the opportunity to obtain pleasure, but he chose to enjoy it alone instead of sharing it. Takahashi Makoto ignored the curious Yoshida and turned to stare at Eiji Niizuma on TV. Tisk, that guy, the king of Black Flame, I really shouldn't have guided him on how to find pleasure. Pleasure. Speaking of which, the person with the weird brain circuit is actually you, Takahashi Makoto, right? Pleasure your sister. I take back what I said before, a guy like you, Takahashi Makoto, definitely should be sent to hell by the resentful readers who send hell communication. Another bowl. Yoshida realized that he was completely fooled, and after slandering Takahashi Makoto in his heart for a long time, he picked up the bowl and chopsticks again. This is probably a typical case of turning grief into appetite, right? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Mao. Chapter 628. Let's not talk about the editor-in-chief who is cheating on food and drink, nor about Takahashi Makoto who is complaining about Eiji Nizuma's eating alone and being dishonest. The talk show on TV is still going on. Although the host is still the same host, the interviewee this time has changed to Shizukawa, who used to be the assistant of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Although the host has realized that the topic of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist is absolutely a taboo after experiencing Eiji Nizuma's fanatical torture, however, when the host found out that the interviewee had become Shizukawa, he was sad to find that he still couldn't avoid the topic related to a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. Because Shizukawa used to be the assistant of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist, now, he still considers himself as the disciple of a certain Chuyuni cartoonist. The cartoonist Shizukawa should not be like Eiji Nizuma anymore, right? Trying his best to calm the inner entanglement and anxiety, the host took a deep breath, and immediately showed a professional smile on his face, and turned his eyes to the cartoonist Jinghe River, who was so nervous that he was a little fidgety. Ah, it's really a pity. After staring at the TV screen for a while, Takahashi Makoto sighed helplessly. Even now that he has become a potential cartoonist favored by weekly and monthly magazine editors, Ryoko still can't hide his weak nature. Such a small scene can actually cause nervous emotions. It seems that his training is not enough. I say, Chen, do you think everyone is like you? After swallowing the food in his mouth with effort, a responsible editor complained unceremoniously, by the way, Yoshida, when did you master this high-level ability of clearly complaining while eating? My beloved cat, you are still hesitating. I've already said that I'm not the one who's wrong. Takahashi Makoto turned around and looked at Yoshida's face full of resentment, and said in a very disgusted tone, the reason why I was not invited is because the capacity of a mere human being cannot accommodate the mad demon god. And don't forget, that's the territory of the four-eyed fox. Four-eyed fox, is it Chen Benjun, a certain middle school manga artist who usually treats others at the top of the food chain? When mentioning Chen Ben of the Okawa Society, his tone is full of fear and vigilance. It would be strange if Yoshida was not curious or surprised. Ah Chen, tell me honestly, is there any problem between you and Chen Benjun? No, it should be with the Okawa Society. What? My beloved cat, you ask this, are you going to get involved? After Takahashi Makoto showed a pleasant smile on his face, Yoshida, who was stared at, instantly felt a chill. I can tell you, but you are just an editor-in-chief. Even if you have the organization as your backing, it may not be enough for the four-eyed fox to play with you for a month. Ah Chen, what's going on? Yoshida's eyes suddenly became serious, and his tone began to become serious involuntarily. Oh, my cat, your eyes are not bad. Takahashi Makoto stared at Yoshida with interest for a while, and then shook his head gently. But my cat, as the master you swear allegiance to, I still advise you not to get involved in this war. Ah Cheng, did you really have a conflict with the Okawa society? Hearing Takahashi Makoto's repeated warnings but not saying anything, Yoshida couldn't help but frowned, and the expression on his face kept changing. After a long time, as if he had made up his mind, he said seriously, although I don't know what exactly happened, but Cheng, as a popular cartoonist in the weekly magazine, if there is a conflict between you and the animation company, we will definitely stand on your side. Hey, my cat. Cheng, listen to me. If the cartoonists have to compromise with the animation company because of a conflict of interest, doesn't that mean we can't protect our cartoonists? Seeing Takahashi Cheng's hesitation, Yoshida thought that a certain Chuyuni cartoonist had concerns, and immediately reiterated his position and the position of the weekly magazine behind him. If that's true, then it means that the weekly, no, even the entire Shueisha has fallen. If that really happens, my cat. Takahashi Makoto paused, his body trembling a little, lowered his head without looking at Yoshida, and asked in the same serious tone, then noble people like you who have such a sense of responsibility, will launch a storm called change. Of course. For the comics we like, for the comics we love, everything. Ha 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 ha, sorry, I can't help it. Looking at Yoshida's serious face ready to say quite shameless when Takahashi Makoto made a declaration of shame, he tried to hold back several times, but he couldn't stop the hilarious virus from roiling inside him. Before Yoshida finished speaking, he entered the laughing out loud mode. I was just guiding you a little bit, ah ha 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 ha, I didn't expect that, my cat, your body actually contains such, ha 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 ha. Takahashi Makoto, you bastard. The anger of being teased, the worry of being treated as a joke, and the shame of unconsciously saying something full of the flavor of a middle school manga artist, so Yoshida's swearing at this moment should be forgivable, right? My beloved cat, thank you for your cooperation, which made me so happy. As if it was not big enough, Takahashi Makoto looked at the angry and ashamed Yoshida and added fuel to the fire, and considering your performance just now, my beloved cat, I swear I will record the scene just now into a classic collector's edition and keep it well. Yoshida only remembered at this moment that Takahashi Makoto not only likes to get pleasure from teasing others, more importantly, a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist has installed many shooting devices that outsiders cannot detect in unknown corners of his home. So, at this moment, Yoshida, a certain editor-in-chief who is known as the black-bellied and poisonous tongue on the editorial side, suddenly wanted to die. Hey. It's Mr. Howwinkuma again. Just when Yoshida was about to use his sharp and poisonous tongue to hit back at a certain Chuyunibaku manga artist who was laughing so hard that he deserved a slap, the TV that was broadcasting the talk show once again heard the familiar exclamation of the host. Yes, it was with the help and encouragement of the teacher that I was able to successfully serialize the manga genre to completion. After hearing the host's almost suspicious questioning, Jinghee River, who had been a little cowardly, seemed to have turned on a certain incredible switch, and her temperament completely changed. And the manga assassination that I am serializing in the weekly, many of the plots and ideas are derived from my daily life as an assistant. Daily life as an assistant. The host had some relevant information about Jinghee River in his hand, and naturally knew what Jinghee River was talking about at the moment. That's right. After noticing the host's gaze, Jinghee River nodded unceremoniously, and then released another piece of explosive news that caught the host of the talk show and the audience in front of the TV off guard, and in the manga assassination, the image of Mr. Koro is also derived from my teacher. Cartoonist, Howwinkuma. A middle school cartoonist. Author, Mao SD Mao. Chapter 629. During the interview show, Jinghee ignored the host's astonishment and continued to make revelations that would make a certain middle-class cartoonist pleasant. When I was preparing to start the serialization of the comic genre in the weekly magazine, I once asked the teacher for advice. Jing-hee recalled that time with a look of admiration on his face. However, the teacher just finished reading it. The 3-chapter comic manuscript predicts the subsequent development of the entire comic. From this point of view alone, the teacher is really amazing. This. The host showed an embarrassed look on Jing-hee. He's boasting about a certain middle school cartoonist, but he could only follow the topic and said, as a popular cartoonist, Mr. Kuma of the Phoenix Academy, through the plot of the entire comic can be deduced from the 3 chapters of the comic. This is really amazing. Actually, it's more than just that, Jing-hee said with some dissatisfaction as if sensing the host's perfunctory attitude. I still remember that the teacher asked me to write out the follow-up plot of the comic genre, and the teacher also on the side, he wrote down his speculation about the subsequent plot of the comic. As a result, the plot written by the teacher was exactly what I wanted to express. It can even be said to be more detailed than what I had planned. In that case, the host seemed to have thought of something, and the look on his face became very exciting, but he still didn't say the unfinished words. Yes, I proposed at that time that the monthly magazine should add the teacher's name when publishing the comic genre, but the teacher rejected it, as if he had guessed what the host was thinking. Jing-hee was calm, he admitted it, and when talking about this matter, Jing-hee showed a look of longing on his face. The teacher said that the plots of the subsequent parts of the comic genre he created are based on the first 3 chapters. That's why Mr. Jasuma from the Phoenix Academy rejected your proposal. This time, the host sincerely began to believe in a certain middle-grade cartoonist. Listening to what you said, Mr. Jing-hee, I also feel that Mr. Jujhen of the Phoenix Institute is really a cartoonist of noble character. Because in reality, there are some scumbag cartoonists who use their own names on the comics completed by their assistants, and shamelessly use excuses such as "it's an honor for you to be named after me" to excuse the situation. Could have become a cartoonist's assistant. Yeah. I still remember what the teacher said at that time. Without the content of the first 3 chapters, there will be no subsequent plot. If you can complete the first 3 chapters alone, you should naturally become the author of this comic. Although he was not the one being praised, Jing-hee still had a shy smile on his face. It is precisely because of the teacher's guidance and help that I can now become a cartoonist like the teacher. So, Shizugawa-sensei, did you create a character like Koro-sensei in the manga Assassination? Because the main purpose of this interview program is to promote the animation of the manga Assassination, the host finally, after finding a suitable opportunity, he quickly guided the topic. Should it be said that it was the interview show named by a certain four-eyed fox? But what I can't understand is why, Shizugawa-sensei, you devised the idea of Koro-sensei inducing his students to kill him in the comics. Because, this is also the teacher's favorite thing to do. Jing-hee spread his hands helplessly and said with a half-smile, the teacher often likes to say things like, young man, come and have a life-or-death fight with me. Since you embark on this thorny road to become a cartoonist, you must have the consciousness to fight to the death with me. I hope you can have a good fight with me one day. Words like this are on your lips every time. After the teacher said this, he would always create some plots that made us applaud. It is precisely because of this that I came up with the character of Koro-sensei in the manga Assassination. I see. After listening to Jing-hee's revelations, the host had a look of surprise on his face. No wonder everyone often says, "Huh? What did you say? Was it about the teacher?" No, originally, what the host wanted to complain about was the rumor that cartoonist Phoenix Inferno Yakuza is an elderly Chuyunibu, but after seeing Jing-hee's performance, the host wisely changed his tune. This is why people often say that comics come from life. Haha. Sure enough, Lord Jing-hee has been completely led astray by Cheng. Watching Jing-hee's momentum suddenly change from weak to impressive in the talk show, Uncle Tintin, who also came from the assistant side, took a sneak peek at a middle-class cartoonist who was deep in silence, and reluctantly I couldn't help but cover my face and sigh with emotion. Tisk, that guy Lyoza. Makoto Takahashi lowered his head, so that the people around him couldn't see the expression on his face clearly at the moment, and could only hear the faint muttering, "That guy, although he is, the identity of the assistant has stayed with me, but I have always been." "Hey, Chen, are you okay?" Looking at Makoto Takahashi's performance at this moment, Yoshida obviously felt that something was wrong. After carefully recalling the descriptions and records of this similar situation in his memory, Yoshida immediately stepped back. After taking several steps, he decisively chose to distance himself from a certain middle-class cartoonist. Because the performance of a certain middle-level cartoonist at this moment is obviously a precursor to blackening, kuya. Obviously I have always trained Lyozi as a disciple, but now Lyozi wants to kill me. As a disciple, Luzii, the first thing he wanted to do after becoming a teacher was to kill his former teacher. If you want to awaken Lyozi's own talents, it turns out that you have to complete the final completion through addicted to masters. Sure enough, the blood flowing in Lyozi's body is the blood of the celestial being and moon rabbit clan. Humph, hum ha 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 ha. The talk show is still going on, but at this moment, no one in Makoto Takahashi's house has the intention to watch anymore. Especially when I heard Takahashi Makoto's trembling mad laughter at the end, not to mention Yoshida and Uncle Tintin, two guys who have been with Takahashi Makoto for many years, even the naturally stupid Mashiro girl and the inexperienced Sarada the boy, that originating from the escape instinct of living creatures when faced with danger, was roaring and instigating the two of them to leave as soon as possible. Interesting. It's so interesting, however, things did not go as everyone feared. A certain middle-class cartoonist entered the rampage and darkness mode. Takahashi Makoto sighed with unclear meaning while expressing interest. Staring at the TV, that guy Lyozi really knows how to make me get pleasure. Should I say that he is worthy of being the disciple I have favored from the beginning? Oh, I knew it would be like this. Yoshida spread his hands helplessly and said to the people around him. If that's the case, then why did you hide behind me in the beginning, Yoshida-san? Uncle Tintin cast a look of contempt at Yoshida. I hate this kind of person pretending to be a prophet and a stickman after the fact. What a shame. Don't use false excuses like in order to launch a surprise attack to stop Aiken immediately. With Aiken's strength, even if Yoshida-san launches a surprise attack tactic, you can still defeat 10 of them. Hey, Tintin-san, do I seem like someone who would abandon my companions at a critical moment? Yoshida tried to refute with a righteous expression. It's not a question of resemblance, but Yoshida-san, you are just like this, right? He also said that Jinghehe was led astray by a certain middle-class cartoonist. Actually, Uncle Tintin, you are the same, right? Yoshida-san, how many times have you succumbed to Aiken's force and then abandoned me and other assistants without hesitation and fled? Think about it carefully. Quehu, I made a strategic retreat. Yoshida, have you started to sell your integrity on a pound? Haha, facing a shameless editor, Uncle Ding Ding decisively used the strongest special word mockery and contempt for cheats to fight back. Hey. Wait, do you want to die once? Because of the constant dispute between the two, his interview show observing Lyozi was interfered with, so Takahashi Makoto finally couldn't help but glared with murderous eyes. The two people on the editor's side and the assistant's side, or, are they actually reaching a private agreement through this dispute, and are preparing to secretly join forces to challenge me? Ahem, it's really worth looking forward to after Shizuka-kun's manga is animated, are you right, Tintin-san? Yoshida changed the subject in a clumsy way while trying to get through by pretending to be stupid. Pretend to be stupid, the Mashiro girl on the side looked at Yoshida, and then gave a blunt evaluation. It's really worth looking forward to. When Jinghe-kun was still an assistant like me, I had a vague feeling that that boy would definitely become a cartoonist in the future. Uncle Tintin also expressed emotion by recalling the glorious years of the past. Prepare to be stunned. Character, after finishing her evaluation of Yoshida, the Mashiro girl once again criticized Uncle Tintin. Boy/Sarada-kun, I think we need to talk." Uncle Tintin and Yoshida looked at each other, then hugged the boy from the left and right, and said in unison with malicious voices. The Sarada boy, who originally wanted to complain when he saw this, but after feeling the threat in Takahashi Makoto's eyes, "If you dare to speak and interfere, I will kill you," he looked helplessly at the innocent-looking Mashiro girl and sighed silently. With a cry, Uncle Tintin and Yoshida walked to the next room with tears in their eyes. "Hey, it's finally quiet," Makoto Takahashi, who was staring at the TV intently, sighed again, and then his face immediately turned into a joyful smile. That's right, let's continue like this. Ryuze, tell me everything you know. As a disciple, you have worked so hard to give me a huge amount of pleasure. This realization really touches me." A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist Mao. Chapter 630. If there is a plot in a comic that is unacceptable to readers, in addition to feeling sad, the reader will also have an emotion called resentment towards the creator of the comic, and they will want to send a razor blade to the comic home, or suggest having a good chat about life with the cartoonist. When human beings hate someone, they are always accustomed to enter the memory mode called returning old accounts. Therefore, dislike of someone is originally just a short-lived emotion, but in returning old accounts under the control of habitual behaviors, human beings will always think of the past that they can't bear to look back on, and then gradually accumulate dissatisfaction, letting simple disgust rise to the level of hatred or resentment. Therefore, after the interview show between Eiji Arizuma and Shizukawa was broadcast, many readers of the program discovered that since the debut of the manga artist Shoin Kuma, whenever there was a plot that made them want to beat the manga artist, no matter how directly conceived, the plot is still hidden behind the scenes, and almost all of it has the participation of cartoonist Phoenix Inferno. For example, the tragedy of the senior sister's head being bitten off. Another example is the tragic death of cute girls in the assassination group Night Raid. For another example, multiple Misaka sisters were tortured and killed in various ways. So, this was the result. Everything is the fault of cartoonist Phoenix Inferno. Since this rumor was broadcast on the TV talk show, although it is no longer possible to verify who made the statement, it is now like a zombie virus, spreading wantonly among readers. Therefore, it stands to reason that the cartoonist Hohoin Kuma has become one of the most insane cartoonists in the history of comics. Therefore, from the very beginning of the comic DN to the recently completed comic One Punch Man, all the comic works serialized by the cartoonist Hohoin Kuma since his debut will be resented if there are sadistic plots. All the readers' opinions have been compiled and used as effective materials and evidence to denounce a certain middle-class cartoonist. Sure enough, the intelligence-gathering ability on the reader side cannot be underestimated. However, during this special period when a certain middle-class cartoonist was regarded as the source of all mistakes by readers, the weekly Shounen Jump, which was not aware of the reader's resentment, actually blatantly announced in the weekly magazine and on its official website at the same time, Comics Hohoin Kayama will team up with his new wife Eiji and the world-class painter Mashiro Shiina to serialize a new comic called Fate in the next weekly issue. So, when this news was announced, readers were shocked. After I learned that the new serial contained the murderous truth of the root of all errors at the Phoenix Academy, I already saw that a tragedy was about to happen. It seems that after Eiji Shinzuma, another newcomer who could have become a popular cartoonist is about to be led astray by the root of all mistakes. Is the name of the new serialized comic actually Fate? Tisk tisk tisk, Fate. If it is a subject involving topics such as fate, although I haven't seen the new serialization yet, I can already imagine what each character in the comic is about to endure. What a twisted fate, after all, this is the manga of the root of all mistakes. Aren't Eiji Niizuma-sensei still serializing Hero Academia? Are you planning to serialize Hero Academia in a weekly magazine just like the root of all mistakes? Well, it feels like Eiji Niizuma-sensei has been completely the root of all mistakes has led to a road of no return. Sensei Nyaizuma Ag clearly said on the show before that the cartoonist he wanted to defeat the most was Mr. Kuma from the Phoenix Institute, but now he has announced that they will work together to complete a comic. Could this be the name of the root of all mistakes? Is it the ability to lead all developments to the wrong? When Yoshida learned from various channels that readers had given the title of The Root of All Mistakes to the manga artist Hohoin Murama, and started to criticize and discuss the heart-wrenching plot once drawn by a middle-class manga artist, while the editor-in-chief felt deeply powerless, he also fell into a tangled state of should I tell Cheng this matter? At this time, should I tell Aiken directly and persuade, teach, him well? It would be great if we could take this opportunity to reprimand a certain middle-level cartoonist so that he can change his evil taste that is almost crazy. Or, in order to ensure that the new serial fee is not affected, I should hide it. But now is the time when the serialization of the comic fate has just begun. If you rashly tell a middle-level cartoonist such news as readers are full of resentment, it may affect his enthusiasm for comic creation, then it will be a bit embarrassing. The gain outweighs the loss. Tisk, damn it. Ahem. Let me emphasize that this is not a difficult choice for Yoshida, but that he is entangled because of the pros and cons. However, while Yoshida was struggling with this, Makoto Takahashi, who was involved in the incident, was discussing with his assistant, Uncle Tintin, a certain plot in the comic with great interest, or in other words, the progress of a certain plot. Let's discuss. Such a plot, I cannot accept it. The look on Uncle Ding Ding's face was terrifyingly gloomy. He gritted his teeth and stared at Cheng Takahashi, and his voice was very low and scary. Cheng, you this guy. Ah, Tintin Gi-san, have you started this empathic bringing in mode again because you were too involved in the drama? Makoto Takahashi leaned on the sofa helplessly, sighing angrily. He stood up and said, I should be glad that Tintin Gi-san is just a member of the cartoonist's assistant side, and the person you met is me? By the way, if you were a member of a criminal investigation organization, it would be easy for someone like you to activate the empathy induction mode. This guy will definitely be cooked by a certain doctor into delicious and fine dishes and presented on the table. Cheng, you guy. Hearing that Makoto Takahashi actually used such a crazy tongue war skill, Uncle Tintin would have knelt down long ago, but this time it was different. Uncle Tintin, who was dominated by the karma fire of anger, was not suppressed as usual. Instead, after a brief moment of incubation, he asked in an almost roaring tone, how much do we have to lose? The noble character of the knight has been trampled on, and the loyalty he believed in like a faith has been repeatedly questioned by the object of allegiance. What you find hard to accept, Tintin Gi-san, is actually that the glorious and kind side of human nature has been questioned and denied, right? Looking at Uncle Tintin, Takahashi Makoto frowned slightly due to some abnormal words and deeds, sat up straight, and said with a serious face, so, actually you are too involved in the drama, Tintin Gi-san. Maybe that's it? Regarding Takahashi Makoto's remarks that poked at his heart, Uncle Ding Ding originally wanted to refute, but after pondering for a moment, Uncle Ding Ding didn't know how to speak. Also, in other words, there is no way to refute it. Hey, Cheng, do you know? I once had a similar experience. Hey. Tintin Gi-san, are you going to let memory kill happen just after a disagreement? Makoto Takahashi waved his hand and interrupted Uncle Tintin's unfinished words without politeness. Compared to your attempt to pass memory killing, come and convince me, I think, in fact, you haven't figured out your own identity and status yet. Identity, and status, sure enough, compared to a certain second-grade cartoonist, Uncle Tintin is still far behind in the topic-changing skill. Aren't I just a cartoonist's assistant? Although I haven't been able to be promoted from assistant to cartoonist like Jing Hikun and others. That's not right, Tintin Gi-san. We are the creators of the comics. In other words, for every existence constructed in the comics, we are the same existence as a god, who originally sat upright. Takahashi Makoto suddenly fell back, lying on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, and said slowly, "When God created this world, he must have loved everything in the world, otherwise he would not have put so much thought into building such a colorful world, right? However, Lord God is God after all. Whether it is the loyalty of knights or the twisted humanity of humans, to Lord God, all existences are equal, so God the adults love everything in the world equally, regardless of good or bad, good or evil." So Cheng, what do you want to say?" Listening to Takahashi Cheng's topic getting more and more irrelevant, Uncle Ding Ding put on a confused look. At this time, it is time to praise a certain middle school student is the second cartoonist worthy of being a top student in the philosophy department, or should we marvel at Makoto Takahashi's abnormal brain circuitry? Tintin Gi-san, you haven't understood it yet. Looking at Uncle Tintin's confused look, Makoto Takahashi showed a look of surprise. Since we, like God, have constructed a world by creating comics, in the virtual world, we should naturally love every character created in the comics, even every existence, just like God, regardless of good or bad, good or evil. That is to say, I used to feel angry because of the twisted humanity in comics because... Although I didn't continue, the answer, judging from the corners of his mouth that kept twitching, it seems that Uncle Tintin already knows it. Well, it's because your love, Tintin Gi-san, is not deep enough, Makoto Takahashi said calmly. Sure enough, I knew it was this. To be honest, this answer is exactly the same as the scene that Uncle Tintin expected. Good people, bad people, noble conduct, moral corruption. Since ancient times, human beings have used various definitions to classify everything in the world. We survive in this world, and we must depend on human beings. All the constraints we have constructed and formulated. Makoto Takahashi tapped the manga manuscript on the table and said slowly to himself, however, in the world we built, we are gods and we have planned it. The existence of the destiny line of human beings and even all living things is the supreme being who arranges the cause and effect between all things. The good deeds of kind people and the evil deeds of evil people are all arranged by us. Everything is arranged by me personally, and everything is under my control. So Tintin Gi-san, do you understand why you are said to be too involved in the drama? Makoto Takahashi squinted his eyes and looked at the thoughtful Uncle Tintin, with a sarcastic smile on his face. In the final analysis, as a person we, the builders of the comic world, are the source of everything. If we talk about good and evil, right and wrong, we are the existence called the root of all mistakes in the true sense. I deeply admire your Excellency's imagination. Although he has completely fallen into silence, the expression on Uncle Ding Ding's face probably means this is what he wants to say, right? Since we chose the profession of cartoonist, we are destined to become the source of all mistakes. And this? It's the choice of Steins Gate. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 631. What is the character's personality? How should the plot development that conflicts with the character's personality be designed, and what will be the character's final outcome? If you want to build a character that can impress readers, you must present it before drawing the comic draft. Just get the character's personality right? Of course, there is no need to make it so complicated. So, even though Makoto Takahashi spoke so passionately when discussing the tragedy of a certain gun uncle, the Holy Grail war with Uncle Tintin, one would mistakenly think that the progress of the comic fate has reached the part where Uncle Gun's tragic exit. In fact, Uncle Gun's tragic exit, it's just that in the opening scene Call of Heroes, he completed his debut in an almost passerby manner. The reason why Uncle Tintin is so indignant, and even uncharacteristically questioning and even angrily criticizing Makoto Takahashi, is naturally because he heard a cartoonist briefly describe Uncle Gunslinger's short and embarrassing experience in the Holy Grail War. That's all. But judging from the results, Uncle Tintin, who was about to lash out at Makoto Takahashi, was actually smacked back by a middle-class cartoonist. So, the fighting power of a cartoonist is far beyond what a mere assistant can match. Makoto Takahashi looked at Uncle Tintin, who was completely silent, and made a sarcastic declaration of the winner. The only one who can defeat the cartoonist is cartoonist. Tintin-ji-san, if you want to defeat me, please give up your identity as an assistant first and complete the job change mission from cartoonist assistant to cartoonist. By the way, after changing jobs and becoming a cartoonist, the power of talking can be greatly improved, although I don't know how you came to this conclusion, Uncle Tintin, but, please don't refer to a second-rate cartoonist. This special existence should be regarded as an example, Kauya. I don't know if it has an improved effect, but there is only one thing I can be sure of now. Makoto Takahashi gently pointed to the Mashiro girl over there who had been carefully completing the manga draft and was not affected by food or conversation. Ding ding Jisang, if you have more arguments like the one just now, I guess you will lose the title of the most capable person under the arrogant cartoonist Hohoin Kuma. Hey, I don't want that kind of title. Uncle Ding Ding twitched the corner of his mouth and complained decisively with a look of disgust. I really have no pursuit. Having said that, Ding Ding Ji-san, judging from your previous arguments with me, it turns out that in this comic, the heroic spirit of Uncle Gun is your favorite, right? Makoto Takahashi quickly waved his brush and quickly completed a storyboard of Uncle Gun holding two guns on the blank paper. Then he sighed with an extremely disappointed tone, I thought you would like this comic board. Mother King Arthur, who is a swordsman, said. Well, although I do like the Lancer hero very much, but that doesn't mean I don't like King Arthur, right? Uncle Tintin picked up the comic manuscript on the table that needed to be processed by himself, and looked at King Arthur at the top the comic draft, with a look of anticipation on his face. Speaking of which, take a closer look at the character of King Arthur. Well, with the image of King Arthur in the comics, it can indeed become the signature of the comic fate, calling it a poster girl it's no exaggeration. Hey, Tintin-ji-san, you already have a family. Do you still need to rely on this kind of unfinished drawing to enter the sage time? Makoto Takahashi mocked with contempt. Uncle Tintin then transferred the flames of war to the snickering Sarada boy, the young Sarada boy over there who has just started to have a love affair, although on the surface it seems that he has got rid of the embarrassing status of being a single, but because of his lack of experience, he has not yet taken an important step in the transformation of his life, and he cannot even do such a simple thing as spreading food at will and torturing a single cat to death, so the person who really needs even the unfinished comic manuscript is actually over there. Internship assistant cat number 2. That's right. The Sarada boy who was shot inexplicably lowered his head with a crimson face. He did not dare to say any words to argue with a certain middle-class manga artist, although the time spent staying at Takahashi Makoto's house may not be long or short, but the boy Sarada learned the lesson in terms of talking. 100 people like me are no match for an uncle in a white coat through painful experiences. Sarada likes King Arthur's comic manuscripts. The Mashiro girl suddenly stopped the painting in her hand, turned her head and stared blankly at the Sarada boy. When the latter looked a little hairy, she spoke calmly. He said softly, I will draw it for you tonight. Mashiro, you don't have to draw any more at night, right? Mashiro, you've done enough drawing during the day, and you should have a good rest at night. Actually, this is what Sarada boy wants to express. However, a certain intern assistant chore cat number 2 seems to have forgotten that the way of thinking of the real white girl is completely different from that of normal people. No, the Mashiro girl stared at the boy Sarada seriously and waved her fist gently. Sarada, don't even think about sleeping tonight. Oh, what a powerful declaration. Fortunately, I was prepared for it. Makoto Takahashi sighed, reaching out and patting Uncle Tintin on the shoulder, and said sympathetically, "Ding ding Ji-san, this was caught off guard. A bite of dog food, how does it taste?" Hee hee. If it weren't for the fact that Sarada boy is underage, Mashiro girl is too natural, and Takahashi Makoto's strength is too fierce, Uncle Tintin would definitely curse MMP. After gently sorting out the comic manuscripts in his hands, Uncle Tintin dragged his lonely figure and silently sat back in his exclusive seat beside the assistant. With tears in his eyes, he began to draw the comic manuscripts within his own scope of work. However, Uncle Tintin I only painted for a moment, but I had to stop the painting because of the sense of voyeurism caused by someone observing openly. "I mean Chen, is there anything else you want to say?" Uncle Tintin turned around with the help of the swivel chair, stared at Makoto Takahashi, and complained in a rather helpless tone, "You stare like this from time to time. Looking at me, makes me unable to concentrate at all." "Ding ding Ji-san, you don't need to worry, I'm just confirming whether the previous conversation is effective." After Takahashi Makoto finished speaking, he held his chin and thought for a moment, then nodded as if he was sure. "Well, it seems that the effect is quite good. I really have the talent as a spiritual mentor." Pardon my ignorance, I don't understand what you are talking about at all." It is said that those who can communicate with Takahashi Makoto are not normal people, so, Uncle Tintin, please don't be depressed. He is still a normal person now. You should be happy at this time. "Well, it seems that Tintin Ji-san, you have now fully accepted the theory that cartoonists are the source of all mistakes." Facing the confused Uncle Tintin, Takahashi Makoto suddenly clapped his hands and praised, "If just like before, if I can't accept some of the plots in the comics, I will feel very troubled. Speaking of Chen, in your eyes, am I such a stubborn person?" Uncle Ding Ding shook his head helplessly, turned around and faced the drawings on the table again, picked up the brush and said slowly, "Of course. This does not mean that I can accept your weird theory. Right now, I am just an assistant to help the cartoonist complete the cartoon manuscript, nothing more. Since cartoonists have decided to draw plots that distort human nature, what if I, as an assistant, find it difficult to accept it? Moreover, doesn't this also prove from the side that the comic plot itself is quite exciting, so exciting that even as an assistant, I am immersed in it and can't extricate myself?" This is what Uncle Tintin originally wanted to say, but after seeing a certain secondary comic after that unflattering joyful smile on his face, he unknowingly turned into the above-mentioned arrogant answer. "Sure enough, the attribute called Tsundere is a highly contagious virus." Is this your understanding as an assistant, Tintin Ji-san?" Makoto Takahashi, who squinted his eyes, suddenly started a meaningless countdown, but the next test about a certain attribute, I just started saying, 3, 2, 1. F***ck. Takahashi Makoto, you actually, dare to draw such a plot?" As Takahashi Makoto's countdown ended, Uncle Tintin let out a roar mixed with indignation and hatred as expected. "Don't tell me what Yoshida-san will think when he sees it in the future. I'm so damn like beating you to death right now." Tisk, 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 the judgment result, Tintin Ji-san, who belongs to the assistant side, indeed has the lolicon attribute. Makoto Takahashi ignored Uncle Tintin's roar that echoed throughout the sky, and said thoughtfully, he nodded and said to himself, at the same time, Tintin Ji-san, who is on the assistant side, will also be included in the people who are prohibited from being alone or having contact with Rin list in the future. So, after seeing lowly Sakura being pushed into the insect warehouse, she gritted her teeth and wanted to kill the insect master. There is no doubt that she has the attribute of Lilac control. If it were Uncle BA instead, he might consider the combination and matching of insects and lowly. By the way, even if I once had the idea of being a savior, after doing such a heartbreaking thing to lowly Sakura, Lord Chong must die, and he must die in a way that makes people feel happy. The true sense of joy that pleases people. Above. A middle school cartoonist. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 632. Although he had many complaints about Takahashi Makoto's crazy how to identify Lolita control, and even though he was full of resentment towards a certain middle school cartoonist for creating such a lost plot, Uncle Ding Ding finally took over the auxiliary work of the comic manuscript after complaining a few words. It's not just because Uncle Ding Ding is a qualified assistant, but more importantly, such a dark and lost plot should not be completed by a pure and innocent girl like a blank sheet of paper. Sarada, Bonkachan. Eh? Didn't I already eat 3 this morning? I can still eat more. Hey, Mashiro, the most important thing to stay healthy is to maintain good eating habits. Sir. I'm healthy. I saw it this morning when Sarada helped me put on panties. Please don't say something that will cause misunderstanding. Why? It's always Sarada who helps me put on panties. Why did the topic suddenly shift to this aspect? Sarada, H. This is not the same thing at all. Why did the topic of eating Bonkachan turn into a criticism of me? Hey, Mashiro, you really can't eat anymore. Sarada, stingy. I have good intentions to take care of you minors who are not familiar with the world, to protect the purity in your hearts that has not been trampled and tainted by society, but in return, I actually get a bunch of dog food like this? Sarada, or should I give this dark and lost comic manuscript to Mashiro girl? Uncle Ding Ding, who was unexpectedly fed a lot of dog food, looked at the boy Sarada and the girl Mashiro who were showing off their affection unscrupulously with a resentful look, and thought darkly in his heart. Of course, Uncle Ding Ding was just thinking about it. After all, according to the test and verification of a certain middle school cartoonist, Uncle Ding Ding, who has a lowly control, can be angry with himself for a two-dimensional world of Matu Sakura, then in order to maintain the innocence of a world-class genius painter, he can naturally swallow dog food with tears while resisting all the dark plots that may lead Mashiro girl astray. Ding Ding Ji-san, even when forced to eat dog food, he still doesn't forget to protect boys and girls. Although he is comparable to a certain air of forgiveness color, but just based on this kindness and heart, I respect you as a real man. Before drawing the background and lines of the comics, you first need to roughly observe the unfinished comics. As a qualified assistant, without understanding the plot, you should not arbitrarily draw some backgrounds or add some lines based on your own preferences. Take the comics in Uncle Tintin's Hand as an example. Loli Sakura went from the Tozaka family to the Matu family. In order to show the change in Sakura's living environment, the brightness of the Matu family's background is naturally darker than that of the Tozaka family, because this can also hint to the reader that Loli Sakura has stepped into a certain devil's cave from her family. It is unfortunate for a child to be abandoned by his parents, but compared to this, what is more unfortunate for Sakura who has to leave her family is naturally being adopted by the Matu family. After seeing the lonely Sakura being taken away by Bug-san in the comics, Uncle Ding Ding couldn't help but twitch his lips, because this uncle with the attribute of Lolita control had already read the subsequent content before, and naturally knew in advance the tragic fate of Sakura. Raising his hand and putting it down and raising it again, Uncle Ding Ding, who has repeated this behavior many times, is obviously struggling. Uncle Tintin's rationality was constantly persuading him that he should turn the comic book with his raised hand and continue to observe, otherwise he would not be able to continue his work as an assistant. However, his emotions were denying his rational decision, because Uncle Tintin knew that when he turned to the next page of the comic book, he would face the scene that made him sad and angry again. The girl named Matu Sakura was buried in the insect cave, surrounded by tens of thousands of insects. Loli Sakura was lying in countless insects, but her eyes did not have a trace of the vitality that a Loli should have, but were filled with despair and dead silence. Although Uncle Tintin had seen the scene from the top of the full picture for the first time, at this moment, he still felt a sharp pain in his heart, and an inexplicable sadness began to spread unscrupulously. Especially lowly Sakura's eyes that had almost completely lost hope and vitality. Her perspective just happened to meet Uncle Tintin, who was observing the comic book, and her slightly opened lips seemed to want to ask for help, or to say goodbye to everything in the world again. Help, help, me. Looking at the miserable situation of the little girl Sakura in the comics, Uncle Ding Ding seemed to hear the little girl's hoarse and weak voice, help, me. The voice in my ear. Uncle Ding Ding suddenly turned his head and looked at the innocent Takahashi Makoto behind him, covering his face helplessly, and said, I told you. I was just lamenting the little girl's tragic fate. Why did I suddenly hear the little girl's cry for help? It was you, Ah-Cheng. Eh? Did you hear little Loli's cry for help just now? Makoto Takahashi showed a decisive expression of I finally found the organization and reached out to gently pat Uncle Tintin on the shoulder. Ding Ding Ji-san, that's what I told you. As long as your love is deep, nothing like a dimensional wall can stop your burning Lilicon soul. Hey, 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 the person who made the sound just now, is it actually you, Cheng? Uncle Tintin rolled his dead eyes and stared blankly at Makoto Takahashi. Although he used a questioning tone, it was very obviously, Uncle Tintin has determined that a certain middle-class cartoonist is causing trouble. Huh? Tintin Ji-san, it seems that your mind has been affected by the phantom sound just now. Makoto Takahashi decisively shook his head in denial, and then his face immediately changed to a guilty look, and he sighed with regret. It's my fault, because I didn't urge you to practice recently. Ding Ding Ji-san, your mind has been disturbed and your soul has been damaged. It's all my fault. Hey. The person who just made that lowly sound, is actually you, Cheng. Although Takahashi Makoto tried his best to show that he regretted it, Uncle Tintin was not moved at all. But I really didn't expect you, Cheng, to have the ferocious ability to produce pseudo voice at the level of a Lolita sound. This is a skill passed down by the witch Rina. In order to learn the legendary skill of Jiaopan technique, because there are two minors over there, I won't the detailed analysis process. Tintin Ji-san, you know, speaking of which, Takahashi Makoto looked proud at this moment. Really, is that okay? But just now, I can be sure. What? Sensing Takahashi Makoto's contemptuous eyes, Uncle Tintin, who originally had no intention of paying attention to a certain secondary comic, asked inexplicably unhappily, and, Cheng, what's going on with that look in your eyes? See, this is a typical case of taunting will cause the enemy to lose IQ. Tintin Ji-san, who was immersed in the world of comics, actually came back to his senses because of the lowly sound in his ears. Makoto Takahashi complained softly in a frivolous and joking tone, and then suddenly slammed the table. He raised his voice and roared at Uncle Tintin, huh? Tintin Ji-san, you still dare to say that you are not a Lilicon? Uncle Tintin, who was intimidated by Takahashi Makoto's sudden burst of momentum, immediately prepared to defend himself after a brief period of confusion. However, after seeing Takahashi Makoto playing with his mobile phone, he suddenly felt something bad. The feeling, swallowed hard, Uncle Ding Ding asked timidly, Cheng, what are you doing with my mobile phone? Ting Ding Ji-san, you said that I should use my current voice to call your family and say some heart-pounding words. A certain second-grade cartoonist once again activated the pseudo-voice skill and used cute. The cute Lilicon said to Uncle Tintin, who was looking frightened, do you think you will be hit by the legendary Hatto and Good Ship 2 combo? Lilicon Ji-san on the assistant side. This. After almost less than a second of silence, Uncle Ding Ding quickly assumed the standard tuxedo seat and kept saying, I admit that I am a Lilicon, I admit that I am a Lilicon, I admit that I am a Lilicon, so Cheng, please let me go. Mortal, for the sake of your sincere supplication, I will grant your wishes and forgive you for your previous sin of disrespect. Makoto Takahashi regained his normal tone. He said this, and then placed Uncle Tintin's mobile phone and a stack of comic manuscripts on Uncle Tintin's desk. But remember, you are still a sinner, and if you want to obtain forgiveness and redemption, you still need to work hard for the rest of your life. Try your best to offer a sacrifice called pleasure. By the way, what are those comic manuscripts? Taking a peek at the comic manuscripts piled up on the table, Uncle Tintin immediately lost his composure. Part of it is the missing part that Tintin Ji-san accidentally left when you were reading it just now. Seeing Uncle Tintin talking about matters related to the comic manuscript, Takahashi Makoto immediately released the secondary mode and switched to with a business-like expression. He said, "As for the rest, of course it's the content of the next chapter." Being an assistant to a cartoonist who is fast and productive is a very unhappy thing, especially for this cartoonist. What's more, he is a middle-aged man who takes playing tricks on his assistant to get pleasure as a hobby and enjoys it endlessly. Second disease. Chen, don't you think you should say something more, for example, a salary increase, another salary increase, another salary increase, etc. Speaking of an uncle-level person, he is eager. Your eyes can actually shine so brightly, Tintin-ji-san, you worked really hard for a raise. But it's natural for Uncle Tintin to propose a salary increase. Not only because of the heavy workload as an assistant, but more importantly, because only a salary increase can compensate for my mental loss. Say something. Ignoring Uncle Tintin, who was full of thoughts about a salary increase, Takahashi Makoto pinched his chin and hesitated for a moment, then sighed helplessly and activated the skill cute mode lowly pseudo voice again. Please come on, Tintin-ji-san. For an uncle who is a lolicon, the support from this kind of cute Lolita voice is far more than the dirty way of raising salary that is full of copper smell. If you don't believe it, please take a closer look at Uncle Ding Ding, who is shedding tears of emotion before you speak. What a pity. A certain cat is going to lose his job.